You got the thing you wanted. Maybe it was the job, the relationship, the apartment, the car, the number on the scale, the amount in your bank account. Whatever it was, you spent months, maybe years chasing it, telling yourself that when you finally got there, everything would feel different. And then you got there. And for a moment, it did feel different. It felt incredible. And then, slowly, quietly, without you even noticing, it just felt normal. And you started looking at the next thing. And you told yourself that one would be the one that finally did it. That one would finally be enough. You're not ungrateful. You're not broken. You're not chasing the wrong things. What is happening to you has a name. And it has been happening to every human being who has ever lived. Your brain was never designed to let you stay happy. And the moment you understand why, everything about the way you are living your life starts to look completely different. Most people believe happiness is a destination, something you arrive at once the right conditions are in place. Once the debt is paid off, once the relationship is stable, once the career takes off, once life finally settles down, and the self help industry has built $1 trillion empire on that belief. Read this book, follow this routine, practice these habits, and happiness will follow. But here is what that entire industry never tells you: the problem isn't your habits, the problem isn't your mindset, the problem isn't that you haven't found the right method yet. The problem is biological, built into the hardware itself. Because your brain was not designed to make you happy, it was designed to keep you alive. And those two things are not the same. In fact, for most of human history, they were completely opposite. And the gap between what your brain was built for and what you are trying to get from, it is the reason that no achievement, no relationship, no amount of money has ever made anyone permanently satisfied. Not one person in the entire history of human species. In 1978, psychologist Philip Brickman at Northwestern University published a study that should have permanently changed how human beings think about achievement. He studied two groups of people who had experienced dramatic life changes. The first group were lottery winners, people who had suddenly received life changing sums of money. The second group were accident victims who had become paraplegic. Brickman measured their happiness levels shortly after their life changing event and then again months later. The lottery winners were initially euphoric, the accident victims were initially devastated. But when Brickman measured both groups months later, the results were staggering. The lottery winners had returned almost entirely to the same baseline level of happiness they reported before winning, and the accident victims, despite their devastating circumstances, had also returned almost entirely to their previous baseline. Different events, opposite outcomes, same result. Both groups ended up roughly as happy as they were before anything happened. Brickman called this phenomenon hedonic adaptation, the tendency of human beings to return to a relatively stable level of happiness regardless of what happens to them. He had accidentally discovered that happiness wasn't something you achieved, it was something your brain actively prevented you from keeping. And understanding why requires going back much further than 1978. Here is what is actually happening. For most of human history, getting what you wanted was never guaranteed. So your brain developed a survival mechanism. The moment you achieved something, it gave you a burst of dopamine, just enough to motivate you, and then it took it away. Because a brain that stayed satisfied was a brain that stopped hunting, stopped building, stopped surviving. Contentment was dangerous, so your brain was wired to reset your happiness baseline back to neutral as quickly as possible. The hedonic treadmill isn't a flaw. It was the most important survival feature your brain ever developed. It just has no idea you no longer live in a world where that feature is necessary. And the treadmill doesn't just reset, it accelerates. Psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky at the University of California, Riverside found that roughly 50% of your happiness baseline is determined by genetics, a set point your brain continuously returns to regardless of circumstances. Around 10% is determined by life circumstances, your income, your relationship status, where you live, everything society tells you to chase. Only 10%. The remaining 40% comes from intentional daily activity. But the hedonic treadmill is always running underneath it, pulling your baseline back down the moment you stop deliberately pushing against it. Think about the last time you bought something you really wanted. The anticipation felt electric. The moment you got it, felt incredible. 2 weeks later, it was just a thing you owned. Think about the last raise you received. The excitement lasted days, maybe weeks. Then your expenses adjusted, your expectations adjusted, and you needed the next one. Social media didn't create the hedonic treadmill, but it gave it a turbocharger. Every scroll exposes you to someone who has more, achieved more, looks better, lives bigger, and your brain processes each one as a data point, raising the bar, guaranteeing that whatever you are right now will never feel like enough. But here is what the research revealed that most people never hear. Psychiatrist Robert Waldinger at Harvard Medical School has been running the longest study of adult happiness in history. Started in 1938, over 80 years of data, his conclusion was not what anyone expected. The single strongest predictor of happiness and health in old age was not wealth, not achievement, not status, it was the quality of relationships, whether people felt they could count on someone when things got hard. The treadmill spent their entire lives pointing them towards things, and the only thing that actually worked was never a thing at all. So here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the self-help industry wants you to know. The pursuit of happiness is the one pursuit guaranteed to make it harder to find. Because happiness is not a destination your brain will ever let you reach. The moment you arrive, it moves to finish line. That is not a malfunction. That is the entire point. Your brain was never trying to make you happy. It was trying to make you better, more capable, more resourceful, more alive. The dissatisfaction you feel is not a sign that something is wrong with your life. It is the engine that built every civilization, every scientific discovery, every work of art that has ever existed. The same restlessness that makes you feel like you are never enough is the exact same force that made human beings climb mountains, cross oceans, and reach for the stars. The problem was never the treadmill. The problem was what you were running toward. Waldinger's 80 years of data didn't just tell us what makes people happy. It told us what the treadmill gets wrong. It points you toward things you can accumulate, status you can display, numbers you can increase, because those are measurable, comparable, rankable. But the human brain at its deepest level doesn't actually run on achievement. It runs on connection, on meaning, on the feeling that what you are doing matters to someone other than yourself. Those things don't show up on a highlight reel. They don't photograph well. They don't get you more followers. But they are the only things in 80 years of data that consistently predicted whether a human life felt worth living. The treadmill will never stop, but you get to choose what you put it under.